Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, I am Sid Part 2. Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. Joining me today I have...
Hey, I'm that horny kid. What?
I'm a geek for fun.
I'm Sexy Steve.
Ooh,
Oh, there we
well,
go.
Steve's always sexy. That's just your default, bro.
That's true. That's true. That's what the S stands for.
So anyway, we're doing kind of a funny thing here on Geeky Gentlemen this month. For the month of February, we initially said like, oh, let's talk about like romance things, and then we're like, no, fuck it, let's talk about things that are just like objectively horny and verge on just straight reviewing porn. So I started off with my pick of Swing volumes 1 and 2, mostly because I'd already read volume 1 and I wanted to read further. This is a comic from Top Cow, with art by Linda Sejic and kind of like co-created and plotted with Linda Sejic. Written by Matt Hawkins and Jenny Chung. This is a spin-off, or not necessarily spin-off, I mean it's connected, but like inspired heavily by Steven Sejic's Sunstone, which is Top Cow's best-selling comic ever. And so the publisher, who I believe might actually be Matt Hawkins, I think I kind of read that somewhere in all the afterward stuff here, decided to try to expand the romance side of the line and kind of dip toe in kink, as well as just trying to create that brand for the comic book industry, it seems. So Swing is about a couple who, after having been married for quite some time, I think they say something like 8 to 10 years, decides to start looking into the swinging community, the non-monogamous relationship style community. Swingers, people that have sex with each other's partners and stuff. So it was something that, like, I, immediately caught my interest because of Linda Sejic's involvement. She, of course, does art and comics along with her husband, Steven Sejic. She is most well known for Bloodstain. I don't particularly care for that. I just read a couple issues and it really wasn't hitting for me. But she also has done Punderworld, which I quite like, which is a romantic version of the Hades Persephone myth. And so to see her involvement with this was something that really interested me, and I just kind of wanted to dive into it, read it, and see how it was going. Matt, you said you'd heard of this before.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with Steven Sejic and Linda. I've read like Punderworld, I've read a little bit of Sunstone, and stuff like that. So I was familiar with this. I think I had maybe like read a handful of like pages. I don't think I ever got through very far, but I do remember kind of hearing about this when it was coming out, because I remember it was being, I at least remember it being sort of marketed as like, hey, it's the fucking Sunstone cinematic universe.
Yeah,
Here's the fucking the spinoff. So I had heard of it for sure, but I'd never actually read it. So I was excited when you suggested this, because really the only thing I've really read from them is a little bit of Sunstone, and I've at least read all of Punderworld. So it was cool to see their it was cool to see Linda Cedric's art because I do think she is a really good artist, and yeah, I enjoyed this, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more. But yeah, I've heard of it, just hadn't really read it.
Steve, you heard of this before at all?
I have heard of it. I hadn't read it before. I've read Sunstone, or at least I've read most of Sunstone. I know of Plunder World, but I've never read Plunder World. And I knew this existed because, I mean, Sunstone was a pretty big fucking deal because of how much it sold. And like Matt said, like the whole universe thing was a big deal. And I've seen a lot of like copies of this go out of stock in my comic book store. So I know it's a thing. I just never read it until this.
Okay. And Alfie, what's your familiarity with this?
Well, I've known of Cedric for a while from their DC work and their DC fan art and stuff. And his wife, obviously has seen like stuff from their same Twitter page and stuff we tweeted. A while ago, they released like a big free PDF of like the first 3 volumes of Sunstone, I think it was. And I'd heard Ian talk about that a little bit, so I was just, oh yeah, I'll check this out and stuff. So I read the first 3 volumes of that, and I haven't checked out of any of their other stuff, but I'd seen it posted around and things here and there. So this was the first time I'd heard of this when you guys recommended this, but I'd known of the couple and their work and the kind of tone that work kind of goes into.
Yeah, so I don't know, it was an interesting thing to talk about. Now that we got all the intellectualism out of the way, fucking horny time, naked people, boobs, vaginas, penises. Yeah, I don't know.
All of that and more.
It really does. It was funny going into this because, like, I've talked about this on the channel before. If you want to go watch the Geeky Gentleman episode on Sunstone, I've talked about this before, but like, I came across Sunstone because I was looking for porn, and I read all of it, and I was like, oh, this isn't really porn, because like it'll do a lot. It'll get like real close to just the scene where they fuck. And then like, and Cedric's talked about where he really likes, Steven Cedric's talked about where he really likes to just play on the anticipation and then play on the moment after. There's very few scenes of just the act that happen throughout that book. Whereas this, like, it's funny to talk about, but like, I really like Sunstone as a story because it gets you really invested in the characters and titillates you with all the ooh, sexy times. This, I kind of like as a story. It's got, you know, somewhat interesting characters, and it's really, really intensely interested on showing you as much sex as possible. Just like this, this is like a French film with the number of sex scenes in this fucking thing. That I was like, wow, this is almost excessive. I'm not complaining, mind you, but it is almost excessive.
I mean, it's interesting because, like, Sunstone, from what I have read of it, like, the anticipation and then the kind of after the act moments seem to be really where that book lives, because it's so much about, like, their romance and about, like, their dynamic as people. Whereas I think what makes this interesting is that it's like, these are people who have been together for a long time, and the story is principally concerned with this specific aspect of their relationship. And what's neat is the way it actually uses the sex scenes to give you insight into kind of where their heads are at in these moments. So it's always nice when you get to have your cake and eat it too, because there's a lot of sex, but it all serves a narrative purpose that feels worthwhile.
I guess I hadn't thought of it in that way, but now that you mention it, it does seem pretty accurate. I think the scene that would probably most exemplify that would probably be when, like, before they really start any, like, swinging proper or anything. It's just when she, like, sends him to go sleep on the couch one night, and then the next morning she sees him, like, being really nice to their kid, and then she kind of forgives him and calls him back up so that they can, like, have a morning quickie, basically. And even though they're both into it in that moment, even though it's got, like, this big romantic build-up with him, like, running up the stairs and everything, it kind of instantly becomes awkward and a little uncomfortable, and, like, they both want it, but they're not really feeling it in that moment. So that's I hadn't thought of it that way. That's an interesting point. I did kind of just feel like I was getting a little distracted by all the sex, but no, I hadn't thought of that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's like in a good action movie where the action sequences inform character and they build on the narrative themes of the story. In this, when someone's getting fucking down and dirty, we're learning. It's a learning moment. It's a fucking teachable moment about these characters, and that's really cool because I mean the romance is there, and it is about their relationship, but it's about their relationship through the lens of their sex life and what their sex life looks like, you know, almost a decade into their relationship. And I think that's a really cool perspective, and I feel like it's a story that warrants having a lot of sex in it. So it works for me. I guess I'm curious if anyone found the number of sex scenes distracting, because I suppose I could see that argument.
I guess I'd say distracting, right? Like I don't think this is a book that like has a story and then gets interrupted by sex scenes that don't need to be there.
It's not Caligula.
Yeah, you know, it's not just like, okay, horny break, you know, like I do think the sex scenes serve a narrative purpose. I think they're drawn really, really well, and I think they're very tasteful, and I think they're kind of nuanced in just like the mature adult perspectives of the things about sex that you don't like see in movies or obviously not watching porn. Like it's realistic in a way that's kind of endearing. So they're not distracting, but that's because there's nothing to distract from because there's nothing that really happens in this book. I guess if I have any problem with this, it's not even really a problem with it, it's a problem with me, which is sounding like a breakup, which is very apropos. This is a very slice of life with some character stuff sprinkled in, and I just got really, really bored because there's kind of no plot, and I just don't care about slice of life in any capacity. Slice of life just bores me as a genre.
Oh, but Agretsuga was amazing.
Yes, because that actually makes sense, and there isn't a story and characters that go forward in that. But like the sex scenes and stuff, I feel like this is like good in a kind of a clinical way, where like I like, yeah, panels are laid out pretty well. I really dig the comedy beats here. These characters are fun and interesting, but I don't care. There's just nothing for me to care about, honestly. It's fine. It's just not my kind of thing. I would want more. I guess I just want more direction.
I don't know. I guess that's an interesting point that I kind of think I see where you're coming from. At least a good chunk through. Definitely, I think through the first volume, I think that's a fair complaint. I think by the end of volume 2, you're kind of getting into more of that plot stuff happening, more the intrigue as they get further like ingrained into this life, basically. And so the plot or the notion of the story seems to be going for more of a the lifestyle is more complicated than either of them thought. Because especially with that scene where she like meets up or bumps into one of the guys they swung with and has an interaction and doesn't immediately tell her husband, and that's where we leave, even though that's one of their like agreed upon rules, and that's where we leave the end of book 2. That's like if you're at a soap opera, that's where like the music swells up and everything, and you get like the Desperate Housewives like narrator comes in and stuff. That's that beat. So it's not like plot focused as in there's a deeply intriguing plot. It is just a plot that's being driven by the choices and the changes the characters are going through, in my opinion. Alright, here we go. Moment of truth. This is the one I'm most curious about. I've got a prediction. I'm gonna write it in chat real quick, but then Alfie, it's your turn to go. So go ahead. What did you think of Swing?
It was fine.
Good talk.
Like, it's... you know what it is? Because, Steve, you're wrong. This is not a slice of life manga. This is a cooking manga. And what I mean by that is there is a genre in manga which is generally not in American comics, where the most common version of it is a cooking manga, but you can also classify something like Yu-Gi-Oh or Kuroko Basket or anything like that. And not even necessarily the sports star thing, because it's not about the sports shonen stuff. No. It is purely a mangaka, the person who's making the comic, is a hobbyist of this thing, or knows people who do this thing, and will make the entire comic about the experience of being a hobbyist about this thing, and details about this thing, and autobiographical experiences of this thing, and stuff like that. It isn't an insult or a bad thing. That's literally what this just is, and I find that's fascinating, because that is not a Western thing. We don't make comics about that over here, but it's huge in Japan. And again, this is effectively a swingers cooking manga, where if you really like cooking or stuff like that, this is like, it's about other people who did that thing. And that's neat on a conceptual level, and I think more Western storytellers should lean into using fiction in ways outside of just necessarily be plot or big things. You can use a comic to talk about hobbies or like in-depth things, or teach you how to play a card game or something like that. That's a perfectly cool use of a comic material. Does that mean that every single one of those is going to engage me? Fuck no. My main thing with this is conceptually the idea of like a very autobiographical or tales from other people, to the point where like the end of every volume has like a Q&A section about like life stories about swingers and stuff. And I kind of have this stuff with some of Chick's work in Sunstone and Sunstone as well, is that they write the characters so much like regular people, like accounts from regular people, that they're very boring. Like there's no I couldn't tell you the name of either of these characters or really anyone involved in this. I think the art is very pretty. I do think the sex scenes are very underwhelming, especially because unlike Sunstone, there's not like anticipation and build up and stuff. If you were to use the example of, say, this is a comic, the sex scenes are the closest thing you get to like an action scene, and there's like not really any interesting layouts or dynamic perspectives or stuff. Like, it's very much just here's anatomically correct people who look very pretty having anatomically correct sex in pretty poses, and it's colored well. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not exciting. It's not titillating. It doesn't get me interested in the thing. It's like, if you were to look at this as a sex comic, I think that is actually a failing. The fact that it is almost a matter of fact about the sex from other like like again, you fucking be on anime Twitter stuff, you'll see NSFW artists all the fucking time, and they know how to make dynamic poses still. That's kind of my thing from the art perspective. Is I think the art is very good, it's just not very exciting. And I think if you the thing that makes a good hobby manga or like hobby comic stand out, and I'll use the example of like Yu-Gi-Oh because this is the one I like, is conceptually kids around the table playing a card game isn't necessarily a good premise for a comic, but you'll like have panels of close-up of like the card drawer, and it's like exaggerated, it throws down and stuff, and it makes it exciting to read. It makes it have a pace, it makes it have like sound effects and stuff. I don't even want to say, oh, that's ridiculous to want that in a sex comic, because the other CG does kind of do that in their sex comic. Sunstone has incredible layouts and stuff, and even Harleen has a sex scene, which I think is more exciting and sensual than the stuff in this book, which has more actual nudity. So I don't think this is a bad comic. I don't think this is a failure or necessarily a bad read. I just think it's a very boring one, and not for like I'm offended by the side of a romance thing. It's just, well, I didn't find the romance very particularly interesting. I didn't find the sex scenes very hot or dynamic. So there was the drawer of the thing didn't get into me, so what I got instead was effectively a blog post about someone and their friend's experience with swinging, which is interesting, but I'm not going to recommend that to someone. I'll read that on Twitter and continue scrolling, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Go ahead.
It's like, it reads like something in the same way that like Sunstone goes out of its way to be very very particular in how it presents like BDSM and that BDSM lifestyle, and it's like this feels like a flyer on what swinging is actually like. Like it's almost like it's almost like a public service saying, hey, this this is what this sub community is like. It's not something to be fucking terrified of or think it's awful. And so I think the choice to have the sex scenes feel so like normal could be kind of part of that. Like it's just like,
I definitely think so.
These are just normal. These are just normal people having normal sex, and like that's normal, and that's who these people are. And so like I feel like you're right, but that's also probably purposeful just to make it something that feels accessible, because that's what the whole book feels like to me. It just feels like here's a spotlight on this community that people don't know anything about, and look, they're like normal people with very common sense and respectable rules and boundaries and yada yada yada. But I also think that like your main characters are a couple who's been together for almost 10 years, and so it's like the normalcy of sex to them and the way it's treated, and how like after 10 years sex doesn't have like the build up and romance and all that stuff, and that's the problem, and they're trying to find that again. So I think that all works for me.
My issue with that, Matt, though, because I thought you bring up a good point of that, but I kind of have the counter argument, is the sex scenes they have are still drawn as the exact same way as the sex scenes that they're supposed to enjoy, and like the ones that, oh, that was really good, the ones they say afterwards, it's all the same. You'll get moments where, like, obviously the obvious ones are like when they're clearly uncomfortable, or like they play it for a gag. It's like, oh, obviously that's different. What I'm talking about is actual how it's posed and how it's inserted and how it's colored. And say like having full frontal sex or something like that. It's the exact same vibe. It's colored the exact same way as when they are enjoying it. So I didn't notice a difference between those two.
I disagree on that, with a caveat. I think that's more true in Volume 2, when Sejic is no longer on the book, when Linda Sejic leaves the book. I think that's definitely more the case. Because there's a lot of sex scenes in both volumes, but Volume 2, like, has a magnitude of increase of them. And I think that's a fair criticism to Volume 2. I think Volume 1 doesn't have that, because the sex scene where they have the first threesome at the end of the book is drastically different in how it's presented and drawn, compared to the other sex scenes we see with these characters, with the exception of the first chapter, when we're going through like the origin of their romance and them falling in love, and when sex was exciting for them. I would argue that Volume 1 does a better job of creating that contrast than Volume 2 does, and I think it's because Sejic leaves the book as the lead artist. She only does the little backup story in Volume 2.
Actually, I totally agree with that. I hadn't thought about that, but I think you're definitely right, which makes me kind of sad, because I think I actually like Yishan Lee's style a little bit more, surprisingly. But I do think Sejic, as the kids say, understood the assignment a little bit better. So I definitely agree with that.
Or even just, again, I think this is something that's kind of underrated when we talk about comic arts, is you can have an artist who can draw a pin-up way better than an artist, or like more detailed, or like prettier characters, or more anatomically correct. That doesn't mean that other artist is going to be better at panel layout or pacing of between panels and stuff. And I think that's definitely the advantage that Sejic in the first volume, like Ian said, it is. You get more dynamic panels, you get more montages of the sex scenes that aren't just delivered in, like the panel borders and stuff are broken up. You get the narration at the same time. Like, I think the one that stands out to me is the one at the very end of the volume, like you said, the threesome, and then obviously when they're falling in love, and those are obviously intentionally meant to be the most passionate ones. But I think on an artistic level, you'd think, okay, so if we're going an ongoing series, and I'm the artist in the second volume, and now they're starting to enjoy it, so now the move would be, oh, so now every fucking sex scene is like that until there's a dramatic clash and we go back to less thing, and that impact would be really, really good, because you would have had like the magnitude of the sex scenes in that volume would have been a very good excuse for an artist just to draw a bunch of hot pinups and stuff and have fun with it and be creative. Not necessarily saying they didn't have fun or the art's not good, but I think what what I'm trying to get across here is purely on a panel composition layout. In the same way I would critique a fight scene for being boring in a comic, that's exactly with sex scene. It paced very similar. There's rising action, there's climaxes, like it's all the same thing.
Yeah, I think the scene that definitely jumps out to me in Volume 2 as the biggest, like, offender here, because this is the scene that kind of the entire book's been building up to, Volume 1 and 2 included, is the first, like, full swap that they do. With the couple in the hotel room. That one, I'm just looking at the art, and I do think you're right. Like, I think it's satisfying from a character level, because it does feel like a little fucking sexist that fucking Dan Lincoln here. I just don't know any of these characters' names. First page of the thing gives you each character name. But anyway, the fucking Dan Lincoln gets his double threesome with the end of Volume 1 and the beginning of Volume 2. You're getting another one. And it's apparently happened more times than just what we've seen. And then finally, Kathy gets what she's wanted out of this whole thing, which is a full swap, the chance to be with a different partner in the same moment. And that one does feel kind of underwhelming artistically. There aren't very good imaginative angles, and it really does only last a page or two. It ends with a pretty decent page, but not, like, great. So yeah, I think you're right. You're onto something there, Alfie.
It ends with a very similar panel to the last panel of that initial threesome, where they're all kind of lying in bed together and they're surrounded by like the flowers and stuff right there. There is like there's like a tenderness that Sejic communicates in her art that I don't think is coming through with the newer art in the ending. And when you compare the paneling of the threesome versus the full swap, you're 100% right that it's not even on that level, which it definitely at least should be.
Yeah, like there's a lot of emotional payoff here in the moment. Like this is kind of the scene that sells that this is the right move for them as a couple, and they like leave afterwards and seem to have had a good time with it and everything. And then like it's interesting because yeah, I do think you're onto something. I did not pick up on this, Alfie, but like the next time they have sex after that swap is the day or so after the masquerade ball that Dan kind of fucks up. They have sex again after that. It's in the bathroom. They've kind of like forgiven each other, but it does look about the same. The coloring, the lighting, the shading is all about the same, and there's like passion in the scene, but it should like to communicate that this isn't the same level of bliss. It probably should look pretty different, you'd think, compared to what we get. And again, then they try to swap again after that. That's the next major scene, and it doesn't work out and can't get it up kind of thing. So you'd think that one should be colored maybe a little bit awkwardly or a little bit like they're chasing that bliss or something. And it does just look kind of samey. So you know what this book might need? Because I'm curious about something. Hold on. Lettering. Okay, so we got written art by, lettering by, and yeah. There's not a dedicated colorist. I think this book it looks like it's trying to copy Linda Sejic's style, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe she does digital painting just like her husband. And so the artist here might be doing digital painting to try to match that style as best they can from the first volume. And the coloring of that is not something they're incredibly used to, or they're not able to take the time to make the coloring as dynamic because digital painting is a slower process than line work handed off to a colorist. That could be part of the reason why. Just a thought.
I can also see that just as well. Did we have any things from this comic particularly like stood out as like the favorite aspect of your favorite thing? And I guess Steve, because you've been a bit quiet.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a ton to say about this just because I was kind of Bored sounds mean, but I was kind of bored reading this.
Hey, I said it first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I had a hard time thinking about this on any sort of like complex level.
Too much
because
brain
it
going,
was-
too much blood going somewhere else, Steve.
I wish. If that was the case, I wouldn't be complaining, or at the very least, I would have more to complain about. But no, it's just kind of a big nothing as far as my brain is concerned. But I guess if nothing else, I do think genuinely the sort of sexual hangups of the two lead characters are interesting, and it's a cool premise, because sex comedies are a thing that have gotten really, really big in the 2000s. Like, we used to do them back in like the 1930s and 40s, and obviously you could get away with much, much less back then compared to now. And so getting a comic that's like talking about things that are quintessentially modern in terms of like stuff we could talk about relating to sex, like swinging, like the fact that you can just kind of do this stuff out in the open and have like mature character relationships regarding it, I think that's all fine, and I think it's interesting. It's just boring, so I don't care.
Damn, I did not expect this from Steve. Steve in the group chat was all like 12 out of 10 boobs, and now Steve is the real Steve has come out. Alfie, quit doing your Steve impression. Let Steve. Steve, does he have a gun to your head?
Again, this is what I keep telling you. It's like I get labeled a prude because I refuse to throw in random boobs willy-nilly, but boobs are a weapon.
Boobs are a weapon.
You can't just use them willy-nilly and expect them to get... Yes, you'll get the meme 10 out of 10, but if you want boobs to really hit, my friend, you fucking save them.
No.
And then
Honestly,
wham, and then you go.
I think there is something to that sometimes, where I don't think this is a book that's trying to like be sexy in the same way that other like things sold on sex appeal are trying to be. Like I think Alfie and Matt are both right in this respect, in that the sex is very normal, but it's supposed to be normal because it's just entirely about like mundane human relationships. They're going at this for 10 years now. It's like there's a kind of boredom to it. And they could use more dynamic art, but I also don't feel like this is a book that's about sex in a dynamic way. But then at the same time, if it's not, and there's not really a plot, and the sex scenes are boring, then I don't know what I'm supposed to be invested in. Because I'd be fine with like dull human, anatomically correct sex scenes in a story that's like really emotionally engaging. Like, there are a ton of artsy films where like the sex scenes are bland as hell because it's all about like the psychological shit that the main characters are going through. And it's not like they're not going through things here, they're just very, very dull.
I mean, fair enough. I don't know. I guess part of it might be in how much you personally relate to things, because like I think the thing that hit for me most and did kind of get me invested in the characters a little bit harder than I think anyone else here did is I've definitely kind of felt some of what she's talking about, especially in volume 1, of like adult life and responsibility kind of driving a wedge between relationships. Because just I think we've all had a day where we've come home from work or doing something, we're just fucking drained and you don't want to deal with anything. I think everyone's had that. And so the relatability of you come from, you're drained, you don't want to do anything, and then that's the time that your partner is ready to go is like the most dreadful thing in the world. It honestly makes you feel like a shitty person. And then you can have the exact opposite situation where you're ready to go and your partner's drained and just not able to do it because you both want to enjoy it. You don't want to just, okay, fine, you do everything, I'm just gonna be here, because that doesn't feel good at all either. That's like, that feels wrong. You want to both actively be engaged in it and happy to be doing it. And so that kind of vibe that she's got in the beginning of the book and how this is like their way to make things hit, to make things fun, I think really hit for me. The other thing that I think made the character a little bit more relatable to me is she talks about how she got married to her first partner. And while I didn't do that, and neither did Haley for that matter, we both didn't really exactly like sleep around a ton. We didn't have like a ton of partners beforehand. So like kind of what they're talking about of that like wondering and thinking about it and all that stuff, that was something that like kind of registered, at least for me personally. And that might just be a person to person level experience. I mean,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'll echo both of those points to varying degrees, because this year will be 10 years with Carly, and we started dating in college, so like I look at this relationship and I'm like, yeah, no, I get it, and like they're 10 years in, and it's like highlighting the fact that being in a successful long-term relationship requires a level of like work, and it requires like a level of communication and like real life responsibilities and stuff get in the way. So like totally get where kind of that's coming from, and I really appreciated that a lot, because I just like that angle a lot. I'm just like, this is talking about relationships in like a very real way, and it's like, yeah, when you're in a relationship with the same partner for an extremely long amount of time, like real life can just kind of get in the way and like threaten to make things boring and just like routine, and like everyone, for their own fucking sanity and happiness in that relationship, has to figure out how to deal with those things that can kind of cause that to creep in. And so like I loved that angle a lot. As far as like where Kathy's coming from, that didn't hit for me a ton, because I slept around a lot in high school. I oh boy, do I say this out loud?
Do it.
I've been in a threesome before. So like that didn't hit for me. But I do get it. I totally understand it. So like I think, and you're coming at it from that angle, and as well as you're also coming at it from like, again, just the general ethos of this whole universe, which is demystifying seemingly sort of deviant lifestyles, and just saying like, you know, here's the way normal people interact with this sort of way of being. And so like a lot of that hits for me, but I do, at the end of the day, I also see where Steve and Alfie are coming from. This does kind of fall under sort of a light reading category for me. Like I never found myself like super engrossed in it, but I never had a bad time reading it. I was just like, yeah, this is fun. This is an easy read. It's not causing me to think a lot, but I'm just enjoying the like journey of discovery that this couple is going on. And as someone who has been in like a long-term relationship for a while, I recognize that these sorts of like conflicts arise, and like seeing people deal with them and being able to continue being happy. Like I always like that in fiction. I always like when you have a couple who's been together for a long time and we focus on what they do that makes that work, because relationships are a little bit of work. And so I like that. That was nice. It was wholesome.
Yeah.
This book about wild group sex is very wholesome.
That should be the one on the fucking back cover.
I guess maybe that's the sticking point, is just like there are certain aspects of this that I find kind of relatable. Like I did sleep around a lot in college, but then other parts of it about like the long-term relationship and everything, I'm like, this, I'm sure for the people that this hits, but it doesn't click with me. And I can like be made to relate to things that I'm not directly have experience with. Like I love Marriage Story. Marriage Story is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I have no experience with divorce or being a single parent or any of that stuff. But there's something about the way that movie is made and the way the characters interact that just hits on universal feelings regardless of the specific circumstances. And I think this just does it for me, where I feel like I could be made to relate to this couple even though I don't have the same experience they do. But there just isn't a lot to make me search for that engagement or search for that reason to empathize with it. I think it's fine. It's just, I myself don't see anything in here that like I can't get from other things that I would like more, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's all fair. I did think it was like, even I reading this, I probably am the person here that liked it the most, but when I was going through reading this, I did feel a little like, okay. Because the sex scenes did start to feel a bit monotonous, and I think that, like Alfie said, I do think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the layouts start to feel a little less, like, spectacular, and the things just start to feel a lot of samey. So it was a bit underwhelming. I've still got Volume 3 because when Volume 4 was getting close to release, they did like a special sale on the first 3 volumes. So I'll still probably read Volume 3, but unless that one particularly knocks it out of the park, yeah, I don't think I'm going to continue with the series, but I don't think that it's because it's like actively bad. It did start to kind of run out of steam for me going through it. I read them all in one sitting. I'd read Volume 1 in the past, and just getting through it again, it did seem to like lose a little bit of momentum for me.
Can I say something controversial that I know people are gonna hate me for?
Always.
It's never stopped you before.
That's true. I don't know why I asked. I don't like the CJX art style
Oh my.
at all.
I low key agree with that. Like, I prefer the art style of the second artist on this book, even though, like, as I said, I think Cedric kind of understands the assignment a little bit better. I do actually prefer the harder lines and like the more, I guess, traditional artwork of the second artist on this. So like, I get you, and I feel like a lot of it.
'cause,
I feel like they saw, like, I don't know. I'm not like a super hardcore art critic, but like I get where you're coming from. I get a very like big same facey vibe going whenever I look at like Cedric stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even mean to say they're bad artists. It's just there's something about the way they draw where it's not that they're not talented on a technical level, but it's so flat to me, and so many of the characters look exactly the same. It's like they just kind of, husband and wife, kind of just palette swap about 3 models and change the colors around a lot. And I just don't find it particularly interesting art to look at. And more than that, I feel like their characters are like weirdly boneless. And sometimes things that are supposed to look sexy just make me wonder, how is your spine bending that way? Which shouldn't bother me. I read fucking superhero comics. But in this kind of stuff, it feels particularly distracting. So like maybe that's the other big reason I just couldn't get into it, is that I don't like the art. I don't like this as a style for an ongoing narrative. It's fine for like deviant art, not safe for work posting, but I don't think it ever evolved beyond that.
See, I disagree with that if we're talking about the Cedrics as a pair, because I do think Steven Cedric's stuff is like a really high tier. I haven't read a ton of Linda Cedric's stuff to really see. I've like read bits and pieces of Underworld. Bloodstain never really hit for me, but what you said about the models, I have certainly found that in the past with Steven Cedric, because he draws primarily without reference, which is a very hard thing to teach yourself to do as an artist. But I think one of the consequences of that is sometimes when he just needs to draw a character, he ends up just drawing one of his characters and it looks like they're cosplaying as the character he's drawing. Like, I remember there was an issue of Suicide Squad, I think it was, that he did the internal art for, and at one point it cuts over to Captain Boomerang and it looked exactly like his character Alan, just in Captain Boomerang's costume. So that was pretty fucking hilarious, honestly. What you were saying, that I do think that does carry over to Linda Cedric maybe a little bit, because I'm looking through her account now and I do notice that her main character Vlad from Underworld, or from Bloodstain, does kind of look really similar to what Hades looks like in Underworld. So I think that might just be a side effect of their methodology, possibly. That being said, I do still really like it. I don't think it's like lower tier art in any way. I think it's really, really good, but I would agree about the sameness of some of the faces.
Well, and I wouldn't even say it's low quality. I think it's just it's not the kind of art that I think excels in a printed sequential book, because so much of it just kind of feels like it's designed. Okay, you know what it is? You know exactly what this is? This whole series, and Sunstone by extension, it's not safe for work comic strips from a newspaper. That's my problem. Is that all of this makes way more sense if you have like 2 pages max and 3 panels minimum of funny gags and characters that elongate over several panels or have big exaggerated features in 2 tiny panels or something like that. This art style and this writing is completely perfect for that. But anything more than like 3 pages or 4 images on Twitter gets kind of boring.
I wouldn't agree with that. I know for a fact I wouldn't agree with that, because I know that's not how these are released. These are always released like pages, multiple pages usually at a time. And they're drawn to be traditional comic style pages. They're not
designed to be traditional comics. I'm just saying that like they give me the impression of someone who's writing from that perspective. Like they give me the impression that there is 6 comic strips worth of material here written for a 22-page issue. And that's why it just doesn't click with me. Because I just feel like there is not 22 pages worth of material here, and it's not 22 natural pages of a story.
And see, I disagree with that, because I know Matt Hawkins is like a traditional comics writer. That's what he does, the 22-page things.
And I'm not saying he
the
doesn't. I'm just saying he does it badly.
Oh man,
that's like that. That's the thing. At the end of the day, with everything the Sejiks do, even Harleen kind of had this for me at a certain point where I'm just.
You fucking talk bad about Harleen. I drive to South Carolina right now and I murder you in the street.
It's a good thing I don't live in South Carolina.
Fuck.
No. The thing is just that whatever they do, whatever their style is, however you want to define it, however they gained experience doing DeviantArt and all of that, I think that kind of left an impression on their style and their writing sensibilities. So even if they're not intentionally doing that, I still feel it, and I feel like it's never outgrown that sensibility. So this might be a 22-page comic book traditional writer. These might be artists that are drawing for a graphic novel. But there's something about this style that just doesn't feel like it suits that, even if it's trying to stand.
Given that, because I think I agree with your premise on that to some extent, maybe not to the same degree. Do you think that comes from us as a reader being so ingrained and so used to how to read comics in the 22 style page format versus this, which had its origins in kind of the new breed of, like, say, a webtoon or a DeviantArt comic page, which it has been collected into trade paperbacks, but like Ian said, it is kind of meant to be, they posted a weekly up page of the new update of what the lives of these characters that I follow and kind of thing, like a peek into their world, which is very much not how Western comics that we read are done. Do you think that comes from our reading experience, or do you think that is a stylistic or a bit of both?
I mean, it might be both, but I mean, I don't know. I've read a ton of webtoon comics and webcomics and stuff, so like I get what that's supposed to be like Legend of Wonder Woman. I wasn't there for that review. I thought that story was fine. My biggest problem with it is when I ordered the trade, I was flipping through the pages, and then I went online and looked at the scans, the pirated scans, so whatever that means for people who want to disagree with this point. I looked at the scans of how the panels are laid out digitally versus in print, and it's really clear that whoever printed the trade did not give a fuck how this book was supposed to look digitally. It just slapped panels together to get a full page. And so that book printed has a kind of awkwardness that isn't there if you're reading it digitally. So I don't think it's that. I don't think that's what's happening. And like even compared to like webtoon stuff like Lavender Jack, or even something as kind of like generic as Wayne Family Adventures, there's a way they do those that's very clear and very simple, where it's like one panel that has maybe 2 characters at most and some dialogue, and then you just keep scrolling infinitely. That makes it work. And if you threw that on a traditional comic book page, you could tell that it's awkward because it's designed to be scrolled down. It's not designed to be read left to right. I don't think they have that problem. I think it's just I've been on DeviantArt for years. I know what DeviantArt artists look like, and I know when DeviantArt artists think they're comic book sequential artists and get it wrong. And it's not that the CJX don't have talent. It's that whatever it is about the sort of DeviantArt format is so ingrained in their style that I can't seem to see it as anything other than that. Because I read, like, all of Harleen, and then I go and look at CJX's Twitter, and he's posting the fan-made Wonder Woman meets Laura Croft thing, and I'm like, these are the same. There's nothing about these that feels distinct or different to me.
I don't understand that point at all. I'm so confused. I think Steve just has a fucking, like, printed comics, like, superiority complex.
No, I get what Steve's saying.
No, I read digital. My entire manga reading experience is reading everything online. Like, I would not have read manga if I didn't read all of it online. Like, it's not a printed superiority thing. It's just like your art is designed for a specific kind of medium. Your storytelling has to contort to what that medium allows you to do in the first place. If you're a digital artist who posts on DeviantArt, your storytelling skills come from what DeviantArt lets you post. If you're someone who does, like the cartoonist who does False Knees. False Knees is a webcomic that's just basically animals in nature that have like maybe 1 or 2 bits of dialogue that are like really funny and just kind of disrupt the harmony of the bit. And so there are usually about 4 panels that he posts as 4 images on Twitter. So his sense of storytelling is always 4-panel jokes. If he tried to do something outside of 4 panels, you know he has to teach himself to write outside of that format, and that's what makes it hard. Tom King is a guy who writes everything in 12-issue minis. Anytime he doesn't write something in a 12-issue mini, you know he has to change how he approaches writing to make it fit inside of something that isn't a 12-issue mini. I think the CJX are DeviantArt artists that have to learn not to be DeviantArt artists, and I don't think they're good at it.
I disagree. I think they do absolutely beautiful comics, and that things read fine and look fine, and the art style never bothers me. The anatomy never bothers me. I'm always really impressed. The only thing I will agree on with any of those points is the same face problem. So I don't think we're going to get much beyond that, unless anyone else wanted to throw in on that discussion real quick.
I don't know. I don't have necessarily a thing to throw in onto it. I think Steve's right. I guess my negative thing negative, or just where I'm more fascinated in it is coming from an artist myself and trying to do comic things, studying a bunch of different artists, is I like the variety that we're starting to get now with how comics are published, and the fact that there is a DeviantArt comic style is like, yeah, it's not for me or anything. I like that it exists. That's cool. The Lara Croft fan art and how it's like, to use the thing, the Lara Croft Wonder Woman thing, how it's paneled is, if you looked at it from a thing, is like there's 2 very distinct scenes that take up place at a different time, but there's no panel borders or breaks, but you can still read it a little bit, but that wouldn't work necessarily in a page, but it works really great in a Twitter post. And that is how people are consuming stuff now. So I kind of think that's probably closer to what the future is going to look like 10 years down the road, of how we consume these superhero characters and comic books and stuff. I don't necessarily think that's an improvement. I think there's still something that's very raw to that and needs to be crafted, needs to be understood. And I don't think the CJX are I think they do very beautiful art, but I don't think in terms of trailer blazing what digital comics are going to look like they're the standard or anything. And that's not an insult. It's fucking hard. The same way like there's great comic book artists that I like, I don't think are going to propel the industry forward. You have to be kind of a Jack Kirby to be able to do that. Like that's very hard. I find it really interesting that we're getting all these different versions. I'm sorry, Steve, continue.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I can agree with that. I don't think the CJX are bad artists. I think they draw very beautifully. I just think their sequential art in this medium is not particularly standout or noteworthy.
I'm going to disagree. Just on the objective point that you're both wrong and I'm right.
I didn't say it was bad though.
No, but you're still wrong. You're wrong, because it is trailblazing, it is amazing, and you're just a bad person who's just jelly that you can't draw the boobas.
I can draw the boobas, but not as well as they draw the boobas, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I can kind of see that with Linda Cedric's art, because like when I've read Punderworld, because Punderworld's, you know, kind of that webtoon style of like you're scrolling down and all that stuff. And when I look at that, I feel like her style just, it clicks in a way that it doesn't click for me in this right away. Because like I said, I actually prefer the art style of the second artist. I disagree about Steven, because Harleen is fucking gorgeous, and I think even in that, he's got a lot of really cool panel layouts, but I don't have much to add other than that to that discussion, so...
All right, well, we've talked a lot about things that feel like they're outside of this book, so before we, which usually is a sign that we're wrapping up, but before we do that, I do want to talk about one last big topic related to the book itself, and that is, as Alfie said, this serves as kind of a introduction or a like look at the swing culture, the lifestyle as it's called. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about, like, what were your perceptions, what was your knowledge base around swinger communities versus what did you learn about it, what interested you, what did you find interesting about what you learned through this book? And I guess I'll go first if anyone, unless anyone else wants to jump in.
I said first. I'm gonna go first.
Okay.
Great. Well, I don't, I really didn't have like a lot of preconceived notions about what like swingers were outside of like whatever the fuck Austin Powers was doing. I'm just like, yeah, that's swingers. But like, no, I mean, I came into this and I wasn't surprised by anything because it's like I said, I've read Sunstone before, or at least parts of it, and this has a lot of that same ethos of just like, we're gonna show this like quote unquote deviant sexual culture, but we're gonna show it in a way that is representative of what the community is like. And so going into this, I almost sort of assumed like, yeah, there's probably gonna be a breakdown of the rules and like how people deal with this lifestyle and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of, I think the standout moment for me that almost feels like the fucking like one of the big points that the writers are trying to tell you is like when they're in the like normal club in book 2 and like a dude gets kind of handsy with Kathy or whatever her name is, and she kind of talks about how like that would never fucking happen at a lifestyle club because they care about consent and they care about like boundaries and shit like that. And it's like this idea that the people who from the outside appear to be the like sexual deviants, they're usually the ones who take this shit very seriously, and they care about like the well-being of the people they're with, and highlighting that idea that like if one person's not having a good time, then like no one's gonna be having a good time. And so there have to be like boundaries and rules and stuff like that. So I think all of that is pretty like interesting and neat. None of it's like unexpected, because that was kind of a similar reaction to reading like Sunstone for the first time, and you get like a peek into this world where it's like, no, the rules matter. Having respect for your partners and stuff matters. So I thought that was cool. That was neat.
Mm-hmm. For me, like the thing that I didn't realize, and the thing that kind of got pointed out both in the story itself, but just kind of throughout the like ending bits of information, the like essays at the back, whatever you'd call it, was just the commonality of this. Because like I wasn't surprised that people still do it. Like obviously it had like an uptick in the 70s that got kind of famous, and that 60s, 70s, and that's what the Austin Powers thing was making fun of. I wasn't surprised that people still do it. Polyamorous and non-monogamous relationships are still like a known thing to me. I was surprised by the like widespreadness of it, I guess I should say. The fact that there are like massive amounts of clubs. Like he talked about this in the essay in the back. It's like he looked into it in LA and he found 1 bondage club and 4 swingers clubs. And I was like, that's interesting to me, because I would assume that like the bondage kink would be the more popular and like accessible thing to people, and just how I think of those dynamics. But apparently, no. And so the way that it established, not only is it still a thing, it wasn't just a flare up in the 60s and 70s, it's a like massive countrywide thing that a lot of people do, was something I was not expecting to really get into in this. Also, it was just interesting finding out like the levels of consent thing. They talk about this a number of times, that like most of the successful versions of this that you'll find are with couples that are like where the woman initiates it. That was kind of surprising information, but the more they get into it, the more that like that makes sense. Hawkins apparently did a lot of research with this, talked to a lot of people in the community. Everything that you see in here is kind of an adaptation of an actual event that was recounted to him. He talks like the first time they go to the club and you find the like they have the ribbons, the red, yellow, and green ribbons. He's like, yeah, I went to my local swingers club for research and it was a ribbon night, and I definitely wore red. Stuff like that was really interesting. Some of the terminology and stuff was other things that I found kind of fascinating here and there.
I guess on my end, it's just there's none of us just know. I'm very much in obviously the internet generation and stuff. I'm just like, this is just like TikTok, so like, yeah, it's just there was nothing in this that surprised. I thought this was quite vanilla, quite honestly.
Alfie's just got a like complete working knowledge of the swinging community, everything.
I mean, you just pay attention. You pick up, dude. My fucking mum and dad had a more fucking adventurous and crazy life than these two did.
I like the scene where they're having sex on the couch and the kid comes down and is like, I know you're having sex. I watch TV on there. That was really good.
that was one of the funnier parts of it for sure.
There's also a fucking bit where he's like playing an MMO and they're talking about a boss and they're just like, oh no, that only enraged it, while showing his wife, which was very fucking funny.
How about you, Steve? Did you learn anything along the way?
Well, I wouldn't say I learned anything per se. I guess if nothing else, I'll kind of echo that. Is I appreciate that this was, at the very least, authentic and normalizing for certain kinds of sexual practices. The rules and contracts and stuff, that's a thing that gets brought up kind of like mysteriously and maliciously in like really crappy sex dramas. Like 50 Shades of Grey like has a scene where they draw up a contract, and it's literally like the worst possible way to do that scene ever, because it's literally like a fucking shakedown, and that's not how those things are supposed to be at all. And so the setting up the rules and stuff and letting it be more casual but still kind of clear and concise was all appreciated and nice. It all felt pretty authentic. Like I've known people that do this and they did sound and talk like this. But I didn't hang out with those people a lot because I thought they were kind of boring. And then I read a book about their life and I found out I was right.
This is like the one interesting thing you do.
Yeah, literally. That's literally it. They have no personality except this.
Oh
like, okay, fine, swinging, yada yada. But you want to like go play a video game? Like, you want to watch a movie? Like, is there other things?
Apparently not. I don't know. I found a lot of this interesting. This is one of those things from like, it's good to know more about this world, I guess. Never in a million years, though. It was very interesting to like just try to think through the process of Dan's character in this and be like, your wife, who you've been with for 10 years, randomly says, I want to try swinging, and I'm like, man, I really hope that doesn't happen to me, because I do not think I could deal with it. So it was kind of interesting to see the vulnerability and the insecurities played with there. I thought that was cool and realistic.
This is not about the book per se, but real quick, I just have a general question for everyone, and I don't have an answer to this.
Okay.
Is it weird that fiction for us as a generation is like so openly and diversely about sex, and we are also having the least amount of sex that anyone has ever had.
Maybe you are.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, Steve.
No, statistically, people between the ages of like 18 to 28 are having less sex than any other previous generation. And like college sex rates are dropping and not like remarkably. People giving birth is dropping drastically. Like the actual amount of people that say are you sexually active to doctors is lower than it's ever been. So
I
like,
actually
people
don't
are
think
just
that's
not
weird. I think
having
that's
sex.
I think that's actually a direct consequence. I think the fact that fiction is becoming such an outlet for people to have these desires, that the impetus to risk the humiliation of that first inst with a person, like in real life and stuff, has kind of the drive of it isn't as well. Like, see, if you take it before to like previous generations, yeah, if you want to do this, you had to go and do it. Now, if you want to, there's fucking anything you can imagine is on the internet. Like,
That's
and you
true.
can pick it away, and you get that from when you're like 10 years old. You figure that out. So like, I think that's a direct consequence. I don't think that's weird at all. I think that's a direct result.
I feel like that's pretty fucked up though. Like I feel like it is kind of fucked up that we gotten to this point now where like we would rather just like read a bunch of fiction about sex instead of just going out to have sex.
I don't know.
I don't know, but like I also like I like as someone who is very sleeping around in my like teens and like late high school, I also kind of regret a lot of that. So like I'm also not like if
Mr.
people
Humble
are...
brag about his threesome earlier regrets his decisions.
Okay, it was a threesome with 2 dudes. Are you really jealous of that?
Kinda. You don't have to tell that part, Matt. You just go with it.
Almost had it. Well, okay, no, look, point is, like, I look back on that stuff and I'm just like, man, I was using that because I was not emotionally mature and I just had low self-esteem and I was just like, fuck, I need to feel validated.
Yeah,
so I'm just
no,
like,
100%
if
agree
younger
with Matt on
people
that.
are having less sex because they don't feel the need to like have that validation, then like that's good. So like there could be a positive spin on this. I don't know.
I just think it's interesting. Like, I just looked it up real quick. Between 2009 to 2018, the number of people who report no sexual activity jumped from 28% to 45%.
Wow.
Which is insane. Like, that's a massive jump.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of am with Matt on this. It was like because when I was in high school and college and around that, what I always experienced is the people who were having the most sex were doing it for what I would consider all the wrong reasons. The people who were like getting, like, I remember fucking this. You remember the girls who'd like do anal so they could stay virgins, and people that like, oh, we're gonna get promise rings because we had sex, and so we're gonna promise to marry each other. And it's like that idea of conflating it with, you know, quote unquote true love and the unhealthy attitudes about the importance of sex from a long-term emotional standpoint. I've really, like, I don't think I had the words to verbalize it back in the day, but I definitely remember picking up on the idea of chasing sex for the sake of sex as a very emotionally unhealthy thing, and I saw the results of it in people. So having less sex because there's more of an outlet for those desires in fiction and in pornography on the internet, I don't think that's the worst thing ever, as long as the sex that is being had consensually in the end of things. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing that could be its own topic. I mean, it's definitely not a case of like we're having less sex because we're seeing more ethical sex in fiction, because like you look at the porn industry in general and how it preys on people and how it's psychologically damaging to young kids. It's like there's a lot of weird things happening here, and there's definitely been other cases where we've seen studies of people who watch too much porn for too long literally can't have sex anymore, or are more likely to develop erectile dysfunction, or have unhealthy or toxic ideas about what sex should be like. Like there's a lot happening there, and I just feel like it's interesting.
Yeah. No, that's fair, but yeah, you're right. That's completely separate vein of topic. What else with this was something I want to talk about? I don't know. I think we're beyond it. I'm sorry you guys were so bored by my porn comic. Damn it.
I enjoyed it. It was some enjoyable light reading. Like and that sounds patronizing, but I don't mean it that way. Like I like a comic that I'm just like, yeah, this is an easy read. This is a vaguely interesting subject matter, and the characters are in a situation that I at least find relatable on some level. So like, I enjoyed it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Okay, well, I guess that means we can go on to ratings. I'll give this book probably 3 out of 5 threesomes.
Oh damn. I'm right there with you. I will give it 3 out of 5. Swinger contracts.
I'll give this 2 out of 5. Weird MMO breaks in the issues that kill the pacing really badly.
Damn, see, I was gonna argue that was gonna be the only scenes Alfie liked.
MMOs are boring as fuck, yeah.
They
You shut your
are,
dirty
though.
whore
MMOs suck ass. All of
mouth.
them.
What are you talking about?
Every single MMO sucks.
No,
I've
Thank
heard
you,
Final
man.
Fantasy 14 is good, but every MMO I've played sucks ass.
no. I refuse to hear the slander from both of you at the same time.
Ooh, you like MMOs? Cringe. Hashtag.
I will give this 2 out of 5 weird sex nightmares about your wife as a spider.
Oh yeah, good times.
Man, if I had a nickel, I'd have 13 cents, which doesn't sound like a lot, but... Alrighty. Well, whose topic is it next time? I think it's Alfie's, if I'm not mistaken. It's Alfie's. Alfie,
Yeah.
you need to pick a horny topic for us to review. We need a horny review.
Yeah, I've got the...
This is the chat. Hold on. Think about this carefully, because you keep insisting you're not a prude. You're not a prude. You've got to show us the thing that proves you're actually a dirty-minded sicko. So, like,
I don't...
no pressure.
I had the fucking name of it, but I'm trying to... How does that... Oh yeah, it's a movie from 2012 called Silver Linings Playbook.
That's not a horny movie.
Yeah, I don't care.
What?
That's just like a wholesome story about breakups being sad.
Yeah, it's romance.
No, it's supposed to be horny, Alfie. We decided on horny.
This is literally about a dude who's bipolar. Like, where's the horny?
Steve, I was trying to trick them. Why do you fucking gas me out like this?
I've seen that movie like 600 times.
Oh my
Can I
god.
review something that is not horny?
Alfie's trying to ruin horny month. I knew it all along.
It's a fucking Oscar award-winning movie about relationships. That should have been me.
I know it's got Robert De Niro in it. That sounds pretty horny to me.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing that one. There you go.
Alfie, you're such a coward. All this time, I'm not a prude. I promise, I'm not a prude. And then won't even pick a horny movie or a horny thing to discuss. Alfie Taylor, you coward.
Uh-huh.
What's your middle name? What's your middle
I know
name?
that now.
You don't get to know.
I need to know. You were required to tell me. It's part of your geeky gentleman contract.
Shit. You work for me.
I can't believe Alfie's so chicken shit, man. I can't believe he
I'm not
backed
chicken
down
shit.
from this challenge.
Want to just watch something that I don't have to watch this week, so I can have time this week to do other shit than watch movies. It's laziness. Please just pick the fucking film.
No, you're not following the rules. There's a simple
my
I'm
rule.
not coming next week.
Alfie,
I'm not gonna be coming next week either if I have to watch
There you
Silver Linings
go.
Playbook.
I know, this is such a fucking letdown. I can't believe Alfie backed down from a challenge. I didn't think he was like that. Goku would be disappointed in you.
Goku's disappointed in a lot of things.
What?
Ian, I'm sorry that I don't want to watch movie. I want to have sex.
I feel that.
There you go.
Alfie's out there. He's living the horror. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's what you do. Silver Linings Playbook.
That's bullshit. Fucking Alfie, what a punk. What a loser. I thought you were cool,
Is
Alfie.
there even a sex scene in that movie? I don't think there is.
There's like a dance thing.
Alfie, get the fuck
It's
up.
a shower sex scene. People have sex in the shower, and yeah, there you go. There's a sex scene there.
That's not horny. I'm disappointed in you.
I'm gonna say
Yeah, it's
this-
not meant to be horny. It's meant to be really sad.
There's a 10-second clip of Jennifer Lawrence from this movie on Pornhub, so that's the most sex that must be in it.
There you go.
Get some of that
If it's good enough for
J
Pornhub,
Law
it's
for
good
10
enough for you,
seconds
Ian.
action.
Fucking Pornhub has the entire Toy Story trilogy on it, so let's not start
Do you
drawing
want
the
me to
lines.
pick that then instead? Okay.
Actually, if you want to watch any of those DC Universe animated movies after they release without paying for them, someone uploads them to Pornhub all the time. It's ridiculous.
What? Really?
'Cause they don't have copyright detection. It's great.
I can watch the new Catwoman thing. Yeah.
Oh, I need to watch that. I was curious about that.
Ugh. Well, fine. Alfie, if you just don't want to be here next week, you can just say it. You don't have to fucking try to nuke the horny month.
Okay, you guys can pick a thing.
Gosh,
Ooh.
I'm so disappointed in you.
All right. Can I pick a horny thing?
Yes,
Oh, bro,
Steve,
I
you
had
can...
a horny thing. All right, well, Steve, you go. Just don't steal my horny thing, because I will be so mad. Because we talked about it, Steve. I will be so mad. I will punch you.
Did we talk? Oh, we did. We
I literally told you, I'm like, I think I'm gonna choose this for horny month, and you better not pick it. Or I guess you can. I don't care.
Like, I'm trying to figure out what the aggression is about. Like, if he picks it, then you got what you wanted.
I know,
then
I
you get to
realized-
pick a
I re-
second horny thing.
I realized that halfway through. I was just like, well, if you pick it, we
Yeah, I
should-
was gonna say like if I pick it, then we'll just review it earlier.
Yeah, I realized that halfway through my rant. I'm like, why am I so angry?
Fuck. Well, now I kind of want to pick that.
You pick whatever you want.
Do it,
Steve.
coward. Pick whatever you want. I mean, yeah, pick whatever you want. I don't care.
All right. I'll pick the thing I was actually gonna pick, and then we'll do your thing next time. Let's watch Basic Instinct.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the movie with the scene with Sharon Stone without any underwear, and that is not even close to the horniest scene in the movie.
True.
Oh yeah.
All right. Okay, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I'm the erotica lover.
I'm the champion of the oppressed.
No, you're not. You're the fucking coward of the oppressed. That's what you are.
And I'm still sexy.
And we are your geeky gentleman and coward, and we will be discussing things.
Ouch. Ow wow.